Hey, welcome to POSTSCRIPT from DNR Media, the Daily News Record podcast channel. I'm Shane Metlin here with Daniel Lin, the staff photographer for the Daily News Record. To do this a little bit differently, we have talked with reporters about a particular story they've worked on and wanted to kind of share the background and details of how the reporting process went. We're going to talk to Daniel a little bit just about photography in general, news photography, what it kind of means to be the visual record of the Shenandoah Valley a little bit. Like, you've probably seen Daniel at something you've attended here in town, whether it be a sporting event, parade, whatever it is. Daniel's been there kind of really being like I said, the visual record of what's happened in the Shenandoah Valley for the last decade plus. How long have you been at the DNR? Like, when did you start?
To set the record straight, I started here in January of 2015.
Okay.
A lot of people that ask, like, oh, were you here for this thing? I'm like, when was that? 2005? No, I haven't been here quite that long. So,
yeah. Well, it does run together because I started 2018, and like somebody asked me the other day, and I like really couldn't even remember exactly when it was. But like I said, we were talking about this before we hit record, is kind of like the role of what the photography does in the newspaper, and really kind of the role of the local newspaper as it becomes the local news website and everything, what the role sort of is as being the news source here locally and living in the moment as we report on these things and take pictures and everything else. But also, I think this is sort of like an interesting aspect that we were talking about before we hit record, is just the responsibility to also be a little bit, like we said, the paper of record for this area. We've recorded a lot of historic events and things that have happened in the last 5 to 10 years. And the visual element of that, like, people someday will try to research whether it be JMU football success right now, whether it be the pandemic and how local institutions handle that, everything else that's happened as the time that we've worked here. The photos that are available are going to be a big part of what people kind of come back to.
So yeah, I talk about this a lot. I just first want to mention, like, I was a history major at Tech, ex-engineer. This is not uncommon for history, but the history major was not an accident to do history to journalism. There's the kind of tired phrase, journalism's the first draft of history. So I always joke, like, my diploma really should say media studies. That's what I really shaped that into. But what I talk about a lot, especially as the role of a newspaper staff photographer, which there are not that many left out there. When visually researching a time period, any time period, could be last year, it could be 20 years ago, 50 years ago, not quite 100. You didn't really have too many photos in the paper 100 years ago. So there is kind of a limit to that. But one of the first things you can do is just like open up a newspaper that has local photos in it. And I don't want to get too in the weeds about what time period you really start to see that. But really from 60s onwards, that's kind of that golden era of local photography really being a big thing. If you want to look at, say, what was life like in 1965, maybe we'll safely say 75, in any given area, I tell people, go to your local library or wherever your local newspaper's microfilm is publicly accessible, and just start scrolling through it. And the pictures you see from day to day really start to put together what life looked like during that time. So besides newspapers being such a useful and quickly accessible, like just quick snapshot of a time period, and I tell this more to other journalism students, especially, like, I work with a lot of students at JMU, just, in my travels. And I always tell them, it's like, remember, when you're shooting photos and writing stories, I guess, too, you're both reporting for the now, So if it's like breaking news or something like that, like you got to get the news out now. Like, hey guys, like this thing is happening. You know, you want to know more about it, we're telling you more about it. Then you're also reporting for either kind of your next normal production cycle. So for a newspaper, that might be for tomorrow's print edition, or if you're broadcast, you know, for the 11 o'clock or 6 o'clock news. This is sort of that traditional, like, you know, next publishing interval. But then you're also, and this is more so for photos, and this is kind of how I approach, especially sports photography. You know, it's like I shoot a game, put the gallery up after the game. Those photos are for the post-game report. They're for a analysis story the next day. They might be, you know, if we do a feature on a player or something, we'll potentially pull photos from that game through the course of the next week or two. Then they kind of maybe sit a little stagnant, or not stagnant, but like unused. But then as we get into toward the end of a season, for example, we might have like, oh, so-and-so is some kind of player of the year or something. And so it's like, we need every photo you have of, you know, the quarterback or something like that. So, well, guess what? Here's a bunch of those. Then, you know, it might sit stagnant, and especially because all of our sports around here, you know, we don't have any professional teams or anything. So things might sit stagnant until the end of the academic year, when suddenly things become relevant again. So now it's like, now we have like the big, like, you know, athlete of the year at the end of the school year. And then we might access those photos one more time for the next season as it gets spooled up, or, you know, maybe in this case of like, especially like JV football or something, someone gets drafted, something like that. Or so the intervals kind of are almost like the photos are useful immediately, tomorrow, next week, in a month or so, in about 6 months, in one more year. And then, you know, the intervals start getting bigger. It's like maybe 5 years from now, they do something big, or like we have a local baseball player, you know, sign up, they're going to get signed to the big leagues, et cetera. And then you get like 10-year, 20-year, 50-year, et cetera. So it's like the photo is it's one moment in time that becomes accessed at these intervals going forward.
Yeah, and I think people would probably be shocked to know like how many photos you file, and even the ones that you don't file, that you take from a particular football game or concert or anything that happens to be going on. Because like you said, like you're shooting it for right now. You're also shooting it for, I know I've had times where I've come to you and been like, hey, JMU might be hiring a guy who coached against them 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You probably have a photo of him from that game, you know, 2 or 3 years ago. Like, let's see what we got. And, you know, you don't know that at the time, but like, that's part of like the actual news business and the, like I said, being part of the historical record in the moment. You're dealing with both the moment and the fact that this is something that may come back to us at another point in time.
So to peel back the curtain a little bit, I don't actually have a good count on how many photos I shoot a year. That number has gone up over the years, but also that's because my cameras have gotten faster and shoot more frames per second, and I'm still shooting everything I would. It's just that, you know, I guess when I started here, we were shooting 8 frames a second. Things dropped to 6 for a few years, depending on the cameras we were using. And now my primary cameras shoot 12 and 15. So yeah, I'm still, you know, kind of pulling the trigger for the same amount of time, but I'm dropping like, you know, twice as many frames. But I think I did a count last year. It's kind of, I always try to do a little end of year statistics review. And I think I shot somewhere in the neighborhood of like 450,000 frames last year, which sports does heavily inflate that number. But and I think I filed approximately, I think it was somewhere between 10 and 12,000. That's been my kind of rolling average over the years. Like, so it's 10 to 12,000 photos selected, cropped, captioned, which is the big one. I'll get to that in a moment too. That's a very important element, and put into the system.
Yeah, 12 to 1,000 photos to have a handful maybe in a day actually make it into the paper, like dozens in a week. And obviously the online element of this has changed that too, whereas like, you know, you used to shoot a basketball game in the dark ages because we're both old men, but like you used to shoot a basketball game in the dark ages and it was like, okay, I'll try to pick the very best photo because that's the only thing anybody's ever going to see. And now you're like, hey, the gallery is up. And so like attach that to the story. And there's, a couple dozen photos of that game that people can also scroll through.
Our process has evolved over the years too. And I think that's kind of been consistent with industry trends. I think back in the day, you didn't see as many galleries, and then talking to some of my colleagues, like some places will drop like 100 photo galleries. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a little bit on the excessive side. Don't want to get, again, too into the weeds here. Like, I generally, out of a basketball game, I'll file 20 to 30 at the high school level out of a game. For a JMU game or even Bridgewater EMU game, that number tends to be a little closer to 30, 40. And the important thing too is that I think quality is kind of the override. And maybe this is just me being a little preachy about the quality of photography. It's like 30 to 40 bangers out of a game. I think everyone's been pretty happy with that. It gets to a point where I don't want things to be too repetitive. But I don't know. Let us know if you want to see more photos.
Yeah, well, quality is like something that I think maybe is taken for granted around here anyway. It's different now that everybody technically has the ability to take their own photos at this point.
I guess you could say that.
Yeah, everybody's carrying a camera around in their pocket, but like obviously there's a difference between somebody skilled and knows what they're doing like you, and even people who should know what they're doing. Like, this is not to throw anybody under the bus. Nobody like we know or anybody wants us to know that. Like, I mean, there's been times where I've drugged Daniel 1,000 miles, not 1,000, but like round trip, maybe 1,000 miles.
I think it was
like,
pretty close to 1,000.
Yeah. To go with me to cover something, a basketball tournament, because it was like, I know I'm not going to get good photos from the other people that are there. And I think, yeah, the quality maybe gets sacrificed some places, and we haven't done that here at the DNR. Like, I don't know how much stuff we can actually brag about in this industry, but I think that's something that like we haven't. We've cut the number of people who are taking photos, which is unfortunate, but over the years, not recently, but like that's the trend of the entire industry. But we haven't sacrificed the quality of what actually makes it on our website and into our paper.
Yeah, that's I maybe if we peel back the curtain a little bit. I didn't think I would be here for as long as I have been. And I'm just going to say it now. Like, I don't think I'm professionally, I'm not really planning on going anywhere anytime soon. I guess I can do the math here. I am about 14 years into my professional career now. And when I started, a lot's changed in the industry, but when I started, I thought I was going to be at like Richmond or Virginia Beach, or maybe trying to make a move to be an AP staff photographer or something by this point in my career. I'm still here at the DNR. It's a bit of a long story. I don't want to turn this into a journalism 301 career track class, but what I try to bring to work every day is, just because I'm at the DNR doesn't mean I need to shoot at a local newspaper level or anything like that. One of the things I'm really proud of is being able to bring kind of this, national, international, like wire level quality of work to our local community. And I really, that really brings me great joy. It's like, just because it's a high school game or like some who cares news event, it's like nothing's stopping me from shooting this like I'm an AP staff photographer or like a Washington Post staffer or something like that.
Yeah, we are fortunate at the DNR that there are people, there are some veterans in this newsroom that have stuck around, I think partially because this is a fantastic place to live, and it has made us pretty fortunate here, and definitely in the photo department with Daniel, a prime example of that. I guess, before we wrap this one up, it's typically POSTSCRIPT, what we do is kind of like follow up on a story in the reporting process that somebody's done. So I'll just like, before we go, opportunity for you to plug us anything that you've shot here recently that you want people to check out, whether it be like a photo gallery that's online right now, or a big centerpiece photo in a recent edition, or something that you think, hey, go pick up this paper. I put you on the spot.
Yeah. Think about that one a little bit. Yeah, I think one thing that I think we put out the. I do say we here. I'll get to that. We did put out the largest JV football gallery we have in a long time out of the Sun Belt Championship game. And some of you may notice, especially because I know the podcast is popular on the sports side of things, you guys may have noticed an extra byline on there. Shout out to Isaiah Vasquez, a friend of mine out of Philly, who is, I guess his girlfriend's family is out of Stevens City. So he was in the area for a while, and he was supposed to. He's a Getty photographer, or a Getty stringer, and he was actually supposed to shoot the App State game with me for Getty, and he got unfortunately pulled off of that at the very last second because they needed him to shoot the U.S. men's national team like soccer stuff instead. But so yeah, he hit me up and he was like, "Hey, so I'm going to be in the area. Any chance you would need a hand?" Shooting JMU football, and I'm like, well, you're just in time for the championship game. Let me see if I can make this work. So that's the first time I've had backup shooting JMU football since 2018.
Yeah,
and that was a bunch of fun, and we're both at the level where we get it. So it was like we were never side by side. So it kind of almost defeated the point of like, hey, like I want to shoot with you. I was like, okay, well, we're going to be on opposite sides of the field. You understand that, right? But no, it's a good time, and kind of able to. I got to actually play photo editor for the first time since college. It's sort of like, hey, here's my take, here's your take. Let's figure out how to put this together. And it's funny, we've actually been using a lot of his filers because it's fun to bring a fresh set of eyes onto something you've been shooting for years and years and years. And also just the ability to effectively be in two places at once. Our shooting styles meshed up very well. And even going through the final gallery, it took even me a moment to be like, okay, which photos are mine? Which photos are his?
Yeah. Hey, well, thanks for coming on, Daniel, and discussing kind of the craft of the news photograph, which can be different than other types of photography. And but I think definitely important part of what we do here. I think important part of the Valley as a whole and the historical record, and just trying to make sure everybody has what they need as far as like news and balancing the bigger picture of kind of what we do here. Well, and like I said, thanks Daniel Lin for joining me here for another episode of POSTSCRIPT. Be sure to check out this podcast, like, follow, subscribe if you're interested in the journalism kind of side of things where we talk about that part. You also get Purple and Bold, other shows to come if you follow us on DNR Media, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you listen to these kinds of things. And thanks for tuning in.